a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. 4 Weddings and a Funeral is a 1994 British romantic comedy film directed by Mike Newell. It was the first of several films by screenwriter Richard Curtis to feature Hugh Grant, and follows the adventures of Charles and his circle of friends through a number of social occasions as they each encounter romance. Andie MacDowell stars as Charles' love interest Carrie, with Kristin Scott Thomas, James Fleet, Simon Callow, John Hannah, Charlotte Coleman, David Bower, Corin Redgrave and Rowan Atkinson in supporting roles. It was made in 6 weeks and cost under £3 million, becoming an unexpected success and the highest-grossing British film in cinema history at the time, with worldwide box office in excess of $245.7 million, and receiving Academy Award nominations for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. In addition to this, Grant won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor Motion Picture Musical or Comedy and the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role, and the film also won the BAFTA Awards Best Film, Best Direction and Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Scott Thomas. In 1999, 4 Weddings and a Funeral placed 23rd on the British Film Institute's 100 Greatest British Films of the 20th Century. In 2017, a poll of 150 actors, directors, writers, producers and critics for Time Out magazine ranked it the 74th best British film ever. Plot. The film follows the adventures of a group of friends through the eyes of Charles, a good-natured, but socially awkward man living in London, who becomes smitten with Carrie, an American whom Charles keeps meeting at 4 Weddings and a Funeral. The first wedding is in Somerset, and is that of Angus and Laura, at which Charles is the best man. Charles and his single friends wonder whether they will ever get married. Charles meets Carrie and spends the night with her. Carrie pretends that, now they have slept together, they will have to get married, to which Charles endeavors to respond before realizing she is joking. Carrie observes that they may have missed an opportunity and then returns to America. The second wedding is that of Bernard and Lydia, a couple who became romantically involved at the previous wedding. Charles encounters Carrie again, but she introduces him to her fiancé, Sir Hamish Banks, a wealthy politician. At the reception, Charles finds himself seated with several ex-girlfriends who relate embarrassing stories about his inability to be discreet, and afterwards bumps into Henrietta, known among Charles' friends as Duckface, with whom he had a particularly difficult relationship. Charles retreats to an empty hotel suite, seeing Carrie and Hamish leave in a taxicab, only to be trapped in a cupboard after the newlyweds stumble into the room to have sex. After Charles awkwardly exits the room, Henrietta confronts him about his habit of serial monogamy, telling him he is afraid of letting anyone get too close to him. Charles then runs into Carrie, and they end up spending another night together. A month later, Charles receives an invitation to Carrie's wedding. While shopping for a present, he coincidentally encounters Carrie and ends up helping her select her wedding dress. Carrie lists her more than 30 sexual partners. Charles later awkwardly tries confessing his love to her and hinting that he would like to have a relationship with her, to no avail. The third wedding is that of Carrie and Hamish. Charles attends, depressed at the prospect of Carrie marrying Hamish. At the reception, Gareth instructs his friends to seek potential mates. Fiona's brother, Tom, stumbles through an attempt to connect with a woman until she reveals that she is the minister's wife, while Charles' flatmate, Scarlett, strikes up a conversation with an American named Chester. As Charles watches Carrie and Hamish dance, Fiona deduces his feelings about Carrie. When Charles asks why Fiona is not married, she confesses that she has loved Charles since they first met years earlier. Charles is appreciative and empathetic, but does not requite her love. During the groom's toast, Gareth dies of a heart attack. At Gareth's funeral, his partner Matthew recites the poem, Funeral Blues, by W.H. Auden, commemorating his relationship with Gareth. Charles and Tom discuss whether hoping to find your one true love is just a futile effort and ponder that, while their clique have always viewed themselves as proud to be single, Gareth and Matthew were a married couple all the while. The fourth wedding is 10 months later. Charles has decided to marry Henrietta. However, shortly before the ceremony, Carrie arrives, revealing to Charles that she and Hamish are separated. Charles has a crisis of confidence, which he reveals to his deaf brother David and Matthew. During the ceremony, when the vicar asks whether anyone knows a reason why the couple should not marry, David, who was reading the vicar's lips, asks Charles to translate for him, and says in sign language that he suspects the groom loves someone else. The vicar asks whether Charles does love someone else, and Charles replies, "I do." Henrietta punches Charles and the wedding is halted. Carrie visits Charles to apologize for attending the wedding. Charles confesses that, while standing at the altar, he realized that, for the first time in his life, he totally and utterly loved one person, and it wasn't the person standing next to me in the veil. Charles makes a proposal of lifelong commitment without marriage to Carrie, who accepts. Henrietta marries an officer in the Grenadier Guards. David marries his girlfriend Serena. Scarlett marries Chester. Tom marries his distant cousin Deirdre. Matthew finds a new partner. Fiona marries Prince Charles. And Charles and Carrie have a young son. Production. The film was shot mainly in London and the home counties, including Hampstead, Islington, where the final moments take place, on Highbury Terrace, Greenwich Hospital, Betchworth in Surrey, Amersham in Buckinghamshire, St Bartholomew the Great and West Thurrock in Essex. Exterior shots of guests arriving for the funeral were filmed in Thurrock, Essex, overlooking the River Thames, with the backdrop of the Dartford River crossing, and at stately homes in Bedfordshire and Hampshire. Music. The original score was composed by British composer Richard Rodney Bennett. The movie also featured a soundtrack of popular songs, including a cover version of the Troggs' "Love Is All Around," performed by Wet Wet Wet, that remained at number 1 on the UK singles chart for 15 weeks and was then the 9th biggest selling single of all time in Britain. This song would later be adapted into "Christmas Is All Around" and sung by the character of Billy Mack in Richard Curtis' 2003 film Love Actually, in which Grant also stars. Critical response. The film was very well received, with critics currently holding a 95% certified fresh approval on reviews aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, with the site's consensus stating, while frothy to a fault, Four Weddings and a Funeral features irresistibly breezy humor and winsome performances from Hugh Grant and Andie MacDowell. Film critic Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4, calling it delightful and sly, and directed with light-hearted enchantment by Newell. He praised Grant's performance, describing it as a kind of endearing awkwardness. The film had its detractors. Writing for the Chicago Reader, Jonathan Rosenbaum called the film generic and standard issue, stating that the audience shouldn't expect to remember it 10 minutes later. Time magazine writer Richard Corliss was less scathing, but agreed that it was forgettable, saying that people would forget all about the movie by the time they leave the multiplex, even joking at the end of his review that he had forgotten the film's name. The character of Carrie was voted one of the most annoying film characters of all time in a British online poll. Box office. The film earned £27.8 million in the United Kingdom. Upon its North American limited release on the 11th of March 1994, Four Weddings and a Funeral opened with $138,486 in 5 theaters. But upon its wide release on the 15th of April 1994, the film topped the box office with $4,162,489. The film will continue to gross $52.7 million in North America, with an additional $193 million internationally, earning $245.7 million worldwide. Recognition. The film was voting the 27th greatest comedy film of all time by readers of Total Film in 2000. In 2004, the same magazine named it the 34th greatest British film of all time. It is number 96 on Bravo's 100 Funniest Movies. Television series. It was reported in November 2017 that writer/director Richard Curtis was developing an anthology television series based upon the film, with producers including Mindy Kaling and Matt Warburton for streaming service Hulu. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?